Hello and welcome to Art Song Notes. My name is Cara Alfano. Today we're going to be taking a look at Robert Schumann's setting of Heinrich Heine's lyric poem Du bist wie eine Blume. We'll talk a little bit about the history of the song, and then I'll take you through the pronunciation of the German text, followed by a reading of the text in an English translation. We'll then take a moment to discuss the meaning of the text as well as the structure of the song itself. And then we'll conclude the video with me giving you a few vocal technique tips that should help aid you in your practicing of this charming German lieder. So let's get started with talking a little bit about the history of Robert Schumann's setting of Du bist wie eine Blume. Robert Schumann composed Du bist wie eine Blume in 1840, which is known as his Liederjahr, or Year of the Song. Now, it is called his Liederjahr because he composed at least 138 songs in that single year. Take a moment, let that set in, because that is a remarkable number of songs to compose in such a short amount of time. Now, 26 of those songs comprise Opus 25, which is known as the collection entitled Myrten. Myrten, in English, means myrtle. Now, myrtle is a flowering tree that is associated with, among other things, marriages and weddings. So, Robert Schumann composed 26 songs, put it together in this collection entitled Myrten, and presented it to his bride-to-be, Clara Wieck, in September of 1840 as a wedding gift. Ooh, that's a pretty romantic wedding gift if you ask me. Du bist wie eine Blume was one of those songs in the collection known as Myrten. So now that we've talked a little bit about the historical origins of Schumann's setting of Du bist wie eine Blume, let's take a look at the pronunciation of the German text. Du bist wie eine Blume, so hold und schön und rein. Ich schau dich an und Wehmut schleicht mir ins Herz hinein. Mir ist, als ob ich die Hände aufs Haupt dir legen sollt, betend, dass Gott dich erhalte, so rein und schön und hold. The English translation, as found in the Fischer-Dieskau Book of Lieder with translations by George Bird and Richard Stokes, is as follows. You are like a flower, so sweet and fair and pure. At you I gaze, and melancholy steals into my heart. I feel as if my hands I ought to lay upon your head, praying that God preserve you, so pure and fair and sweet. Now, if this poetry reflects at all how Schumann viewed his wife Clara, he saw her as angelic, pure and sweet and unblemished. Now, Robert Schumann was about 9 years older than Clara, and Clara was just turning 21 when they got married. So he may have saw himself as being so much older than her, as being more aware of the harsh realities of this world. And he may have felt very protective of her, asking God to preserve her innocence from the ugliness that can happen in this world. So let me ask you, the singer in the 21st century, how you might relate to this text. Well, I don't think you necessarily have to look at it in the same romantic way that Robert Schumann may have looked at it in his relationship with Clara. You could, but really, I think you could apply this text to anybody whom you care deeply about and whom you feel protective of. I will say for me personally, I connect with this text and think about it in terms of my son. Now, when my son was born, I prayed, and I actually continue to pray, a form of this poem over his head. I pray that God will preserve his innocence and his sweetness and his purity for as long as possible, because I, too, like Robert Schumann did with Clara, want to try to preserve my son from knowing all the harsh realities of this world, because I am aware, just like Robert Schumann was, that he inevitably will learn about those things in time. So what I would encourage you to do is to think about someone in your life whom you love and whom you're protective of, whether it be a sibling or someone that you are dating, or a niece or a nephew, or someone that you mentor. And think about that person as you are singing the song. So now that we've talked a little bit about the meaning of the text, let's talk about the structure of the song itself. The time signature of Du bist wie eine Blume is in 2/4, and the tempo is marked langsam, which means slow. So I would actually recommend feeling an 1/8 note pulse rather than a 1/4 note pulse, just because it will help you in organizing the rhythm of the notes, and it will really help you navigate the triplets that you'll find in measures 2 and 10. Now, this remarkable song is very short. There's really only 8 vocal phrases in it, and the song itself is only 20 measures long. The piano accompaniment is fairly uncomplicated. It's full of chords made up of 16th notes that are played by the right hand. The vocal line does have a couple of tricky places in that there is a diminished fifth on the word Wehmut and a descending minor seventh on the words so holt and aufs Haupt. But otherwise, the melody is fairly gentle and relaxing to sing. Now, one point of interest that I want to show you, and that is on the phrase betend, dass Gott dich erhalte. Notice how the piano accompaniment just has 1/4 note long chords. This is a different rhythmic texture than the whole rest of the song. I feel it is almost as if to suspend time as you're asking for God's preserving hand. And it's also a fairly climactic moment in this short song. So now that we've talked a little bit about the structure of the song, let's take a look at some vocal technique tips that I can give you to help you in your practicing of Du bist wie eine Blume. Vocal technique tip number 1. As I mentioned before, keep an 1/8 note pulse. This will help for a variety of reasons. It will help you keep the tempo steady. It will help give a forward energy to every single vocal phrase that you are singing. It will help you navigate the timing of those triplet 16th notes, and it will help you feel more confident with the tempo in the sections that are marked ritardando. So keep an 1/8 note pulse. Vocal technique tip number 2. Be accurate with the timing of those triplet 16th notes. Yes, they can have a little bit of flexibility in terms of the note emphasis, but just make sure that you're not changing the rhythmic figure to be something other than what it truly is. Vocal technique tip number 3 is make sure you sing all the way through every note in the vocal turns on the word schön and the word legen. We want to make sure that there's a core to the tone of every single one of those notes on those turns. So I will sing for you an example. Schön und rein. Notice I didn't come off the breath, but rather I let every single one of those notes have core and beauty. So make sure you do that as well. Vocal technique tip number 4 has to do with keeping the balance between singing a legato line, but also staying true to the German diction. I'm going to speak specifically about glottal lifts that have to come before words that begin with vowels. To give you an example, the line Ich schau dich an und Wehmut. Notice that there's going to be a little bit of a glottal lift before the word an and und. I had to double check that. So when I sing it, ich schau dich an und Wehmut. Notice I'm really still trying to be very legato, but I'm just doing a little bit of a lift of the sound before those words that start with a vowel. What we want to avoid is eliding the consonant of the previous word into the word that begins with a vowel. So what we don't want to have happen is ich schau dich an und Wehmut. Notice how I elided those consonants. We don't want to do that because that is not completely accurate when it comes to German diction. All right, vocal technique tip number 5 is don't let your singing in the sections marked piano, the piano dynamic level, don't let your singing be too quiet and don't come off of the core of your sound just because you're supposed to be singing softly. Remember that dynamics are relative. They're relative to the size of your own voice and to the size of the space that you are singing in. So never think that you have to sing softly and do that at the risk of singing off of the core of your tone. I hope you found this video helpful in your study of Du bist wie eine Blume. If you did, then I encourage you to check out some of the other videos here on this channel, and of course I invite you to subscribe to this channel. Thank you again for watching, and until next time, happy singing!